That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, go man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to the Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean.
This is Joe Howie.
And we're coming down right to the end of the regular season. Friars are going to close things out this Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox, hosting Villanova. This is Villanova who will be without Colin Gillespie. He tore his MCL last time out against Creighton. Villanova won that game, clinched the Big East regular season title. Obviously, Friars did not win on Wednesday night, lost at St. John's. Joe, what are your expectations heading into Saturday?
Well, I think what's important to note about this Villanova team is that, yes, they lost their star Colin Gillespie, but they still managed to beat Creighton by 12. So a lot of people on Twitter are alluding to the fact that, Villanova is not going to be the same. I don't know. I mean, if we lost David Duke, we'd lose by 30. They lost Colin Gillespie and won by 12. So I think, the fact that basketball is a team sport goes highly under the radar when you've got these big playmaking guys, but they'll survive. And being that Villanova is my least favorite sports team ever, it kills me to say this, but I think they're going to beat us on Saturday. This Friars team has not shown us anything consistent this season. If anything, they've shown us a consistent drop off of where expectations were set. So it really kills me to say that because I'm a Yankees fan, and the Yankees-Red Sox is the most historic rivalry in all of sports, and I hate Villanova more than I hate the Boston Red Sox. So that tells you how I feel about them. But yeah, I don't think the Friars are going to be able to pull off a win this weekend.
It's certainly going to be a tough one. Like you said, I mean, Villanova is a talented team, and even without Gillespie, they had some rough stretches against Creighton, but they held their own for a lot of that game. And this is a guy who's a top 5 guard in the country right now. So I mean, you look at the stats. Jeremiah Robinson Earl ran the point at parts of the first half because Justin Moore was in foul trouble. He had 5 assists. Justin Moore ran the point in the second half. He had 5 assists. Jermaine Samuels had 7 assists. So this is an offense that was still able to facilitate and get things done. We'll have to see who they bring out to run the point on Saturday, but I think you're probably going to see a mix of Moore, Daniels, and Robinson Earl kind of sharing that role depending on who's on the floor.
Yeah, it was really odd because we were recording our post-game show, and I had the game on the TV in the background. I wasn't really paying attention to it. And then as soon as we, stopped recording and the show ended, I looked up and I saw Robinson Earl bringing the ball up, and I was like, that is so strange. Like, my first instinct was, okay, they play him out of position all too big. Now they're going to play him out of position too small. I had completely missed Gillespie getting injured until halftime, so I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a wild sight to see if you don't know that Gillespie is injured. But, I mean, Robinson Earl handled it well. And there's a reason Villanova is the Big East regular season champions. They're very good. The Friars were able to hang with them for a half down in Philly earlier this season. Second half was not close. A big part of that is Villanova is that good of a team. But we're Friars fans. Let's take a step back. Let's try to be optimistic about this for a second. If the Friars are able to pull off the upset win, you're at home, it's senior night for Horkler and for Watson. How are they going to get that done? How are they going to, in this rivalry, Big East rivalry matchup?
Well, on senior night, I think it's only fitting that you feed the senior Nate Watson. I mean, this goes back to the preparation week for Creighton, Villanova, 2 road games. You should be feeding Nate every offensive possession, if not maybe every other offensive possession. Villanova does not have a big man that can guard him. Given they did do a pretty good job on Nate at Villanova, whatever you want to call it, but that's also because Nate was in foul trouble. I mean, if he put one arm on Robinson Earl, the whistle was blown, and that's what happens when you play there. So hopefully you get Nate to play smart. If you can feed him, that's game over. I mean, Villanova cannot guard him. If they double team him, he can kick it out, and then Hopefully our shooters will be on. I mean, it couldn't get much worse than last night. But if our shooters are on, Nate can kick out. But it starts in the paint with him.
Yeah, no, you certainly got to go through the paint against this Villanova team. Nate Watson looked good during stretches of that game, but yeah, he got into foul trouble, and that was a frustrating point for the Friars. He had 12 points, 5 of 10 from the floor. He's gonna have to be a little bit smarter in this matchup. This is a Villanova defense that's, I don't know, they're not fantastic. Their offense, on the other hand, fifth in the nation in Ken Palm efficiency. Obviously, that's with Gillespie, so we'll see if they take a hit. But other than a 2 for 27 shooting performance from beyond the arc against Butler, they haven't had a whole lot of letdowns this season.
Yeah, and I think if there's something that the Friars do particularly well, it's prepare for 3-point shooting teams.
Mm-hmm.
Again, let's erase what happened last night because that was just God, that was disgusting. But I think you got to look at Creighton here because Nate Watson, in a post-game interview with John Fanta, went over play by play a drill that they did every day at practice for like a half hour, where all 5 guys that were on the floor practiced defending the perimeter. I think if you apply that same preparation to this game, it's gonna help you a ton. Villanova lives and dies by the three, and I will say this until the last day of Villanova in the Big East, so probably forever. This team will live and will die by the three.
Yeah,
They don't play big. They always look for second chance opportunities outside of the arc.
yeah, and they usually hit them. But you're right. This is a Friars defense that has done well against them. The best aspect of the Providence defense this year has been against 3-point shooters. Opponents hit 3-point shots at just over 30% of the time. It's top 30 in the nation. And they're good at running teams off the line. I mean, I remember even us, you watch the warm-ups before the games and you see these defensive drills where they practice the rotations and they practice getting out to the line and contesting shots.
Mm-hmm.
Even when the Friars defense has struggled, they've been able to handle that. So they're going to have to get in the face of Villanova and stifle that attack if they want any hope of winning this game.
Yeah, and on paper, we have some long defenders that should be, upsetting the smaller Villanova, especially with their 3-point shooting guards. But
Mm-hmm.
again, this all depends on what Friars team shows up. If it's the Friars team that showed up last night against St. John's, then you might as well just chalk up a W for the Wildcats and not even play the game at this point.
Yeah. I mean, we saw the Friars defense played well against Villanova the first time. They scored 71 points, but a lot of that came kind of in the third quarter of the game. The
Yep.
defense in the first half was fantastic. And Villanova only shot 7 of 25 from beyond the arc. That's below average for them. And their best 3-point shooter that day was Colin Gillespie. 15 points, 3 of 6 from beyond the arc. Justin Moore was 1 of 6. Robinson Earl was 0 for 4. Guys like Caleb Daniels, 2 for 5. I mean, none of these guys shot particularly well. If they perform like that on Saturday, then the Friars might have a chance if they're able to make this ugly.
Yeah, and this is where I think the no Gillespie is advantageous for us. I mean, I think he takes the most threes on Villanova. You might have to stat check me on that, Matt, but just from the eye test, it seems like he's taking a majority of their 3-point looks. I think Robinson Earl should be up there too, but without him there, they're going to have to look for other options for scoring. And obviously, you've got Robinson Earl, you've got Justin Moore, you've got some other key guys. But without your go-to guy, it's going to be interesting to see how they spread the wealth. And I think that actually helps us defensively because instead of having to put all our focus on, one guy, like I think a great comparison is Marcus Zagorowski from Creighton. Obviously, Creighton, all 5 guys on the floor can kill you at once, but the one guy you don't want the ball in the hands of is Marcus Zagorowski. The same thing with Marcus Howard from Marquette last year. So with Gillespie off the floor, sure, it eases you. I mean, obviously Villanova's got some other scorers, but it allows our defense to not, be so high alert for one guy. You can kind of play a little more comfortably knowing that you can stay to your man and you might not necessarily have to help if Gillespie gets on the run.
Yeah, and Gillespie, and he takes the most 3-pointers of anybody on Villanova per game.
Okay.
But I mean, the other way this helps you is assists too. I mean, he leads that team in assists by 1.5 assists per game. Going to Moore's the next guy up. He's their facilitator. If they don't have another guy who's able to step up and facilitate in that same way, and the Friars were able to get in some of these passing lanes, I mean, you saw what St. John's was able to do when they upset Villanova. They forced a whole bunch of turnovers and frustrated that offense. The Friars have not been able to force turnovers the way they typically do this year, but if you can do it for one game, you can pull out an effort and dig deep and find that there might be a little bit more opportunities here, and you can stifle things. And that's what happens when Gillespie isn't on the floor.
Yeah, I also think um, we're knowing Ed Cooley and the way he likes to prepare. He's probably going to prepare for the different scenarios that Villanova might bring out without Gillespie. I just hope that we are smart in our execution. Like, I hope we don't jump the gun and get sloppy, because the second, and I mean the second, the slightest hip check, the slightest bump, your fingertip brushes on Justin Moore, the whistle's getting blown.
Yeah.
That's something that it's unanimously agreed on across the entire conference, is that Villanova gets any call they want. And yet Jay Wright is still there, working the refs every game. God.
I mean, he's good at it. He's good at it. Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating as it is to be on the other end. I mean, Jay Wright works to get those calls in his favor. I can tell you that much.
Uh,
But yeah, and
uh,
I mean, I went back. I was rewatching some of that first game, and it's notable. I mean, Villanova plays soft in the paint intentionally, because when they do
yep.
that, they can get the calls their way. So you have to play smart. You know that they're going to do that. Nate Watson can't throw his body around like he usually does, because they're going to call
Hmm.
fouls. You got to play with a little bit more finesse, which, I mean, he's going to have opportunities to do. And if they try to have Robbins and Earl running the paint, there's definitely going to be opportunities for Horkler and Watson down low to do that.
It's so disappointing, because Jay Wright was a coach in the old Big East, and obviously he's highly successful. But the fact that these guys flop so much in the paint, it's so irritating. Something, Matt, I think not many listeners know, is I used to be a really heavy Villanova fan. Like,
Yeah,
obviously I've always loved the Big East, but I've been watching Jay Wright since, well, like, watching and observing and analyzing probably since high school. But I've been watching Big East basketball since into my middle school days. Jay Wright used to be very classy. He used to coach a very physical team. When they won the 2016 national championship, there's no one more excited than me. I came to Providence freshman year with Villanova t-shirts. But then on the night that we played Providence at Villanova, I think it was February 1st, 2017, my seat in the student section was by the Villanova bench, and he had completely changed from the coach that I had watched in years prior. He was begging for calls. Guys, I think it was Chris Jenkins, took like the softest charge on Kyron Cartwright, and Jay Wright was like clapping him up. I was like, this is what he's become. Like, success has not aged well on him. And for the Villanova fans that are like, oh, you're a salty Friar fan. No, I used to be a Villanova fan. I used to love Jay Wright, but success has not aged well on him. Not at
yeah,
all.
you know what you're talking about there. And there's a reason. I mean, Villanova is the heel of the conference. UConn wants to be. Marquette wants to be in some ways, but Villanova is, because at the end of the day, you win, you get a target on your back. The more you win, the more people you're going to make mad, and I mean, you see it across sports. Villanova is that in the Big East. Nobody likes them, and they've earned that reputation. It comes with winning the way they do. So, I mean, it's senior night, senior day, senior afternoon, however you want to phrase that, and home game in Alumni Hall. Friars coming off a tough loss, and it's Villanova. It's a rivalry game. You know they've had this circled on the schedule. Forget anything else. You know the Friars are going to come out playing hard. Doesn't mean they're going to win. Villanova's the better team here, but anything can happen. And Villanova clinched the regular season title. They're playing for seeding right now. I think as long as they look somewhat decent without Gillespie, that injury is not going to affect their seeding. They'll be a top 3 seed in March.
Yeah,
They might
Villanova
not
should.
they might not come
Sorry.
out with their hair on fire. The Friars do. You never know what's going to happen.
Um, just a point, Villanova should thank their month off for their Big East regular season title. Obviously, their winning percentage is better than Creighton's, and even if Creighton wins on whatever Saturday, their winning percentage will still be better. But Creighton, by the end of day Saturday, we'll have played a full Big East schedule. Villanova has not. So essentially, Creighton gets penalized for doing the right thing, following the COVID rules, and not getting a shutdown. Meanwhile, Villanova gets a month off and gets the crown. I understand you have to make exceptions given the circumstances, and that's fine. But I feel like it's a poor representation. What happens if Villanova plays those games that got canceled? They could have lost. They could have won. You don't know. But to penalize Creighton because they played a full schedule, I don't know. But yeah, I don't think Villanova is going to come out and come out firing. I do think they're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder because of Gillespie, and it seemed that way at points last night, especially towards the end of the second half when they kind of pulled it away. It seemed like they were doing everything with that momentum, with that drive for Colin.
Mhm.
I hope that our guys can recognize the importance of this day for Nate Watson and play with that same energy for him.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, that's what you hope for, especially with a team that preaches family. You expect that kind of energy and that type of response. Unless Watson and Horker both told the guys in the locker room, "Hey, we're coming back next season no matter what," which I don't think is what's going on here. You got to
No,
give it your all. I mean, this is going to be the last time that this group of guys suits up together at Alumni Hall on campus. So make the best of it. You got nothing to lose. So go out there and play. Now, I will say one thing I'm somewhat interested in here, since the tournament hopes, this game is not relevant to the Friars tournament hopes. That rides
correct,
entirely on whatever happens at Madison Square Garden. So my
correct.
question is, does Ed Cooley play a little bit more Alan Breed, especially if things get out of hand? Does he play more Alan Breed? Do we get to see freshman Jair Davis? Do we see more Goodine? Do we see a lot of Bynum? Do we see the young guys and the guy Croswell, the guys who are going to be part of this team next year? Do you think that Cooley might play some of those guys, especially we'll say early second half if the game's already out of hand?
Yeah, and that's actually, Matt, we didn't prep for this before the podcast, but that's something I was thinking about. I really think it depends on what's happening in the game, and I think you set the perfect stage, early second half. I'm going to say around the 12, 13-minute mark. I think if Ed realizes that, things aren't going our way, you might see Duke get pulled off. You might see Watson get pulled off, Reeves get pulled off. Breed had a double-double when we played at Villanova, so I, I'm expecting some minutes from him. I think he's a tough matchup for them. I think he did a great job defensively on Gillespie, who obviously isn't in the lineup. But you stick him on Justin Moore, it's the same thing. I think we're going to see a lot of Bynum. I think you need to start getting Bynum more run. And Gant, that's what I want to talk about. Gant. I think we're going to see a lot of Gant. This is going to be a really big test for him going forward. Because, like you said, realistically, NCAA tournament hopes are gone. Right now, most NIT bracketologists don't even have us there. So, realistically, we're closing in on the final days here. This you got to start. I hate this phrase, but you got to start building momentum for next season. You got to
Yeah,
do it. The younger guys have to start getting in-game reps
yeah,
because you saw what happened to them this year.
yeah. And you gotta figure out what you have there, especially. I mean, it's not like if you play these guys, they lose a year and you're waiting on what do you call it, red shirts or anything. Everybody gets this year for free. There's no reason
Yep.
to not play them if they're at all ready. I mean, like if Jair Davis is just not ready to play, he's a liability out there. Then don't worry about it. Like if he's still struggling in practice and still acclimating. But yeah, I think those are what do you call it? Those are guys you can try to get in if the situation's right. Obviously, if it's a close game, I don't think that's what you're trying to do. Winning is first. But you mentioned David Duke in there. Do you think this is going to be his last game? Is he going pro, or are we going to see him again at the Dunkin' Donut Center next season?
So this thought has been racing through my mind the past 24 hours. I had a very distracted day at work today. I know Fanta and Kevin Farhar and probably most college basketball analysts have him out the door. I don't think so. I mean, it could go either way because if I'm an NBA scout and I look at David Duke and I look at how good he is, and then I look at all of his inconsistencies from the season, and I say, okay, well, if two mediocre, let's just say, If Kobe McEwen can shut down David Duke at Marquette, then who's to say that Steph Curry can't shut him down in the NBA? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if they look at David Duke's if they look at the entirety of the season for David Duke, they're going to see inconsistencies. And if they watch some film, I really hate to say this, they're gonna see some lackluster defense. I don't think he played great defense last night. And normally Duke is one of our better defensive players. I think in a lot of our losses he plays some sloppy defense. That's
Yeah.
probably the first knock on David Duke I've had all season, but it's time to be brutally honest here. Sometimes he's just not dialed in defensively. He's more focused on scoring, and that's fine. But if you're going to play in the NBA and you have that size, you're going to have to play the point guard. There's no combo, whatever. You're going to have to play the one, and
Yeah.
you're going to have to guard up some really talented point guards that are in the NBA, some high level guys that have been there for triple as long as you've been playing basketball. So personally, if he leaves and signs an agent, I think that's stupid. I think that's really stupid. I think he can test the waters. If he hears that he's a first round pick, he's gone. If it's anything but, I think he comes back.
And I think he'd be served by another year here because I think that you hit on something great with the defense. He's 80, 90% of the way there. He needs to get to a little bit more to prove his ability at the defensive end. And on offense, he doesn't quite have the finishing touch you want. He's a really
Yep.
good 3-point shooter. I think you want to see him bump that up just a little bit. And his finishing numbers around the rim are not near where they would need to be for him to be successful in the NBA. If he goes to the NBA now, he's going to be maybe a 3-and-D type guy because he can't drive. His dribbles aren't good enough for it. So he's going to be a spot-up shooter. They're going to try to get him to play one-on-one defense on somebody down at the other end of the floor. And he can be a lot more than that. I think if he comes back and you're able to get a full season of him at the 2 next to Bynum, that's going to help a lot. It'll help at both ends of the floor. I think it would help his draft stock. Will he do it? I mean, obviously that remains to be seen. There's good reason for why he could still go to the NBA if he is a second round pick. And there's good reasons for why he would stay, even if he's a first round pick, even if he's a projected lottery pick, which I don't think he will be. But
No.
and at the end of the day, it's his decision. So it's 50-50 in my eyes. Either he stays or he doesn't.
Yeah, it really is a toss up. What we just said, that's in no way to knock him. I mean, when you play on the national stage like that and it's apparent that you want to play at the next level, you have to be ready for, you subject yourself to the opinions of those who are watching. I think that's a given when you
A
play
higher
on
level of
national
scrutiny.
television.
Yeah.
Right. And listen, we're not NBA scouts, but it's clear to see where his strengths are and where he struggles. So can he go to the NBA and play? Absolutely. Is he as sharp and as tenured as he should be to play at the NBA? No. And part of this too is I think you and I would both love to see him back next year because that's a huge sigh of relief.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if he's back next year, that changes the expectations for this team dramatically.
Oh, yes. Well, it changes the expectations, but take the expectations and knock them down 2 levels. So if they project us fifth, expect seventh, because that's honestly what I've come to realize with this Providence team over the past couple seasons. It's
If they're
really,
projected,
really,
if they're projected in the bottom half of the conference, bump them up 2 spots. If they're projected in the top half of the conference, bump them down 2 spots.
yeah. If you project them in the middle, they'll probably stay in the middle.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the state of the Friars right now. Obviously, if you'd like to hear an extended version of the state of the Friars, we do have a past episode recorded a couple weeks ago with John Fanta and Kevin Farahar. You can find that on our YouTube channel. If you'd like to go back a bit and give that a listen. We're going to have a lot more Friars content coming for you, even though the end of the season is coming up rapidly. We're going to try to keep this going into the off season, talking everything we can about the Friars, coming at it from every angle. But right now, Providence has the last game of the 2020-2021 regular season, sitting at 12-12 overall, 8-10 in conference play. The Friars will finish under 500 in the Big East. That is a certainty at this point. They can still finish above 500 for the season with a win on Saturday, or at least regular season. And then after that, they'll be playing on next Wednesday, at Madison Square Garden for the Big East tournament, and we'll see what happens from there. let's make our predictions for this one, Joe. What do you think happens? How's it go?
This goes against everything that I believe in, but I think Villanova is going to take it. I hate Villanova, really do hate Jay Wright, but right now they're the better team. They're going to beat us. I think anywhere in the 7 to 12 point range is realistic. I just hope that we put up a fight. I hope that the supporting role shows Nate Watson out in style because he was your horse all season. That kid worked his tail off in the offseason to get to the point where he is today. Put on a performance for him, play for him. You don't have to win the game because, as we've seen, it's very tough to win games against opponents that are better than you. But put on a performance for Nate. Nate's also my X factor. If we do win, it's because of him.
I like that. I'm gonna go. I think it's gonna be a little bit closer. I think you're gonna see a lower scoring game. I'm gonna say like probably 67-63 Villanova, something in that range. And it's just, I think Villanova's going to struggle at times without Gillespie, but they're going to do what they're going to do. They're going to hit the shots late that they usually hit. I think the Friars will probably play a pretty good game. I'm actually going to go with the X factor here being Noah Horkler. As much as I love Nate, I think Horkler's in a unique position given that Robinson Earl is probably going to be asked to do a little bit more. And Horkler might get a couple favorable matchups because of that. I don't think we're going to see him struggle to shoot the ball like he did against St. John's. He'll probably have a little bit of a bounce back there. And I mean, he's a plus rebounder. If the Friars are able to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to rebound too. I think Horkler is a massive asset there. So I'll go with him as the X factor. Shake things up. But it's the duo in the front court. It's got to be both of them.
Notable, Matt, I really like that X factor. Now, I'm looking at the box score from the last matchup. Horkler only got 7 minutes. So Jay Wright and Villanova did not get to prepare for the Noah Horkler that has emerged the latter half of the season. Mm-hmm. So maybe if you can get him going, then, he's a spark plug. Something I'll never forget is when Villanova beat us at the Dunkin' Donuts Center 2018-2019 season. I think it was like January 25th, something around that timestamp. Mekhi Ashton Langford put up 20 points. And in the post-game presser, when Jay was asked about it, he said, well, we planned for Alpha Diallo, and Alpha Diallo had an off night. We did not plan for Mekhi Ashton Langford. Last season, at Villanova, they didn't plan for Lawan Pipkins because they didn't get the full Lawan Pipkins the first time around. So as good of a coach as he is, he's very predictable in who he prepares for. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't prepare for Horkler. He could be a sleeper.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'd forgotten about that post-game press conference moment talking about Mekhi Ashton Langford. But yeah, it was spot on. And we'll see. Maybe Nichols was a bigger factor in that first game. Maybe Horkler was able to fill that role, and we'll get a little bit something different. Friars lost the first one 71-56 down at Finneran Pavilion on the campus of Villanova. They'll return and play at Alumni Hall on Saturday. Once again, the game is at 2:30 on Fox. We'll end the show with this. It's 5 Big East games. DePaul won't be in action, but everybody else is. Is there anything in particular outside of Providence you're looking forward to on Saturday?
I would like I'd like Xavier to lose.
Xavier at Marquette. That's going to be an interesting game.
Never mind. They'll probably win that. The reason I say that is because I think Xavier is a very similar team to us, and the fact that they took all this time off and they're going to make the tournament easily irritates me because I think our resume is a little bit better than theirs, but we did the honest thing. We followed the protocols and we played a full season. So just another side tangent. This is something that's really irritated me this season is that teams like Villanova and Xavier, they get hit with COVID, they take extended periods of time off, and it's benefiting them going into the postseason. Like Villanova gets the crown, but they didn't play a full Big East schedule. Creighton plays the full schedule, gets penalized. They don't get the crown.
Yeah.
Xavier doesn't play a full Big East schedule. They're probably going to play they don't have to play Wednesday, they'll play Thursday. And right now they're in the tournament over Seton Hall and us. Like I think Seton Hall should deserve it more than Xavier. I think I don't really think we deserve it, but I think if we hadn't lost so many games, our resume is strong enough to get us in.
Yeah, and
So I think Xavier,
Xavier loses on Saturday at Marquette. They will be under 500 in conference play as well. They could easily
Well-
fall behind both St. John's and Georgetown.
yeah,
I mean, it's an odd season, that's for sure. It's a wacky one.
we just
Not your typical anything in the Big East this year.
gotta
That
throw out the whole season.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to be moving on to the 2021-2022 season shortly, but this is going to tie a bow around things on Saturday afternoon. After months of us doing that, we thank you guys for staying with us for the season, for listening to us. If you are new to the show and coming to us late here in the season, make sure you're following us on Twitter at the Flex Hoops. Follow our personal accounts at Joe Howie or at Matt St. Dream for more content. And as always, thank you for listening.
For one last time in the regular season, go Friars.